Good evening to all of our participants on the panel and to those of you who might be viewing this town hall this evening. We hope you find our town hall interesting and lively. I'm State Senator Barbara Favola, and I represent portions of Arlington, McLean, Great Falls, and some precincts in Loudoun. And I chair the Rehab and Social Services Committee in the Senate, and I sit on a number of other committees. And I also chair the Senate Women's Healthcare Caucus. And I'm taking on a new role, and I'm going to be the Virginia coordinator for the Italian Americans to elect Joe Biden. I want all of us to get involved, but I happen to select that niche. But it's a goal we need to all share. And joining me today is Delegate Kathleen Murphy, whose delegate district is in my Senate district. Her entire delegate district's in my Senate district. Kathleen represents the 34th district for those of you who are counting numbers. And she's a great representative. You're on Finance Committee and Privileges and Elections. And I think are you Vice Chair of Cities?
I'm Vice Chair of Transportation.
Transportation.
On General Laws, Finance, County, Cities, and Towns. And I started the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, which is a caucus in both the House and the Senate with
Senator Adam Ebbin.
Yes.
I've been an active member of that caucus. We had a great year this past year, really transformational legislation passed. So
we worked on it for a really long time.
We have. Yes. Thank you for your leadership in those areas. Also with us is Senator Jim Rosapepe, and Jim is a state senator from Maryland, a very distinguished career. You were a delegate before you were a senator. You also served as ambassador to Romania under President Clinton. So you have a state perspective, an international perspective, and I think you're very dedicated to the Italian Americans to elect Joe Biden effort. You're one of the national coordinators. Happy to be helping you, Jim. So thank you for joining us. And our very special guest is Congressman Tom Suozzi. Tom, thank you for taking a moment out of your very busy schedule. Congress has been busy lately. We appreciate your service, and I understand you're on the Powerful Ways and Means Committee.
That's correct.
And you're on the subcommittee, the Chief Tax Writing Subcommittee, and you've also worked on a number of other issues, including Foreign Affairs and the Armed Services Committee. So we appreciate your efforts, and I know that it's not easy being in Congress. I only have 39 other senators to work with, and you have a couple hundred other Congress people.
It's a great honor.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for joining us. I am going to ask Jim to give us just a little update on why it's important to elect Joe Biden, and tell us if our participants and our viewers what we can do or how we can contact you if we want to get involved. Go ahead, Jim.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you so much for hosting this and leading this effort in Virginia. Thank you very much. I mean, I think if you're on the call, you think Donald Trump is not all he could be. And you think that America can do better, as my late colleague Elijah Cummings liked to say, we're better than this. We are better than this. Yeah. We're going to make it happen. I guess I have two pitches. One is, it's not just about defeating Trump. It's about electing Joe. I've worked with Joe Biden over many years, including when I was ambassador to Romania. And he believes in democracy in the world, in Europe, in Southeast Europe, where we had ethnic wars. He believes in democracy in America. He has a passion and a knowledge and a skill that will make him a terrific president. I signed on with him, as I like to say, before it was cool, back before he announced his candidacy, because I know him and I think he'll be a terrific president. People talk about how he can work with other people. He learned the basic lesson of kindergarten: play well with others. You say, well, he could work with conservatives, he could work with segregationists, he could also work with Bernie Sanders. Did you notice that when he rolled up the victories in Super Tuesday, Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders and the other candidates who are great people, they're terrific Democrats, they rallied around him. They rallied around him because they know Joe Biden. They respect 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 Joe Biden. And I think that's part of the importance of this campaign. It's not just about beating Trump. It's about electing a president who shares our values, who shares our passion, who knows how to move our country forward. And we all see the polls right now, is he's leading Trump probably nationally by 10 points, in battleground states by a few points. We can win this election. We can reelect congresspeople like Congressman Suozzi, who I appreciate very much being here today. We can reelect Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, the first Italian-American Speaker of the House. We can take control of the Senate. If we do that and we elect Joe Biden president, I was on a call a couple of weeks ago with a couple of U.S. senators who said, if we do this right and we think ahead, 2021 can be like 1933 or 1965 or 2009, where Democrats were able to move a progressive agenda, an agenda for working people, an agenda for ordinary people, agenda for senior citizens forward in a big way. So this is an important election for all the reasons we understand, but it's not just about defeating Donald Trump. The other thing I want to say is this will be our opportunity to put the first Italian-American in the White House. Jill Giacoppa Biden. Dr. Biden, Joe Biden's wife, is Italian-American. Now, a lot of people don't know that, and that's why it's really important that Senator Favola and all of you are here today. You got to spread the word. So her name is Jill Jacobs Biden because at Ellis Island, her grandfather, like so many of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, their names got changed. But his name was Giacoppa, not Jacobs, when he came to the United States. And she was raised Italian-American. She gets it about Catholicism. She gets it about Italian culture. She gets it about education. She gets it about all the things that we take for granted as Italian-Americans. It's hugging and all the stuff we can't do right now, right? And so this is a big deal for us because he married an Italian-American. What higher respect there is for Italian-Americans than to marry an Italian-American? That's what Joe Biden did. And so this is a big deal and a great opportunity for all of us to be part of the American story. We're a big part of the American story right now. Obviously, one of us is Speaker of the House. We have many members of Congress. We have terrific people like Congressman Suozzi. We have governors like Andrew Cuomo, like Gina Raimondo. One of the co-chairs of Vice President Biden's campaign is Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles. I could go on and on. But the reality is that this is a great opportunity for us. And we can elect a president who gets us. As people say, we know Joe and Joe knows us. And I think that's more true for Italian Americans than anybody else. So thank you for joining us today. There are lots of ways you can help. We're going to talk about that more as we go on.
Thank you, Jim. That was a nice, warm welcoming, and everything you said was spot on. We would like to hear an update from what's going on in Congress, and we certainly want to hear your perspective on why we should elect Joe Biden. So I am going to turn it over now to Congressman Suozzi, Tom Suozzi, a New Yorker, and you must be very proud of Governor Cuomo right now. He's
doing a great job.
Doing a great job. He's got one of the highest ratings for trustworthiness because he's been such a good crisis manager of the COVID-19 issue, and has been very direct and forthright with New Yorkers and the country. So he's a great role model. Anyways, without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Congressman, and thank you so much for being with us. We know how busy you are. So thank
Barbara,
you.
thank you so much. Really appreciate being on the call with you. And Rosapepe, thank you so much for being on the call as well, and the great leadership you're showing. And Kathleen, and I see Julia Chen on here. She's not talking to anybody, but she keeps on email, texting us all and saying, please submit your questions. So thank you so much, everybody. I think I was asked to be on this call for 3 reasons. Number 1 is that I'm a first-generation Italian-American. My father was born in Italy, came to the United States as a young boy, and lived a great American success story. And I'm one of the only 2 first-generation Italian-Americans in Congress. It's myself and Rosa DeLauro.
Oh, yeah.
And second, I was asked to be on this call because I was the first member of Congress to endorse Joe Biden after he announced. He announced it in a video at 7 o'clock in the morning. I endorsed him at 7:30. So I got out there right away because I've always believed in Joe. He's such a wonderful human being and such a talented individual. We'd be so lucky to have him as our president. And third, they couldn't find anybody else at this time of night. So.
No, you were on our A list. Don't be self-deprecating. You were on our A list.
We were tracking you down.
So I am a former mayor and a county executive. And when you talk about Andrew Cuomo and how he's handled this crisis versus the way the president has handled this, when you're the chief executive and you're in a crisis, you get a lot of input from different places. You've got all the healthcare people on one side talking about the science and safety and those questions. Got other inputs coming over, the economy, we've got to keep the economy, all these different competing, then you have the military and your political people and all these voices. The job of the executive is to take all those voices, synthesize the message, and come out with a clear plan as to where to go. That's what Andrew Cuomo has done so clearly.
Yeah.
That's what Joe Biden has done. Since day one, he's laid out a clear plan as to how to address the coronavirus and what we need to do. And he just gave a big update on it recently. And that's what the president has not done.
Yeah.
You know, some days the president will say stuff. You say, oh, maybe he sounds pretty good today. He sounds pretty good. The next day he'll say something completely crazy because he'll just, you hear these smart people. If you repeat what the smart people say, you can sound good once in a while. But when you have all these conflicting messages coming out every single day, you can't possibly lead people through a crisis. And that's just one manifestation of why we need Joe Biden in office. So an update in Washington is that, the Democrats in the House under an Italian-American Nancy Pelosi have passed so much positive legislation to help people, to help families, to help people's wages to go up, to try and reduce their health care costs, to try and make government more responsive. We've done so many different things. We did the HEROES Act, which would be so important to Virginia, to all not only your state, but your community, every single community, counties, towns, villages, cities, everybody would be affected because we need to get the state and local money. We've passed so many things that have all gone to the Senate to die. Because number one, Mitch McConnell will not do anything when you appeal to his reason. You have to beat him to get something done. You have to outmaneuver him. And because the president is always throwing up roadblocks every single day with his different tweets and different messages. So right now, the HEROES Act is the big thing that's on the table. I was very happy in the beginning of the coronavirus, as happy as you could be. I mean, it was a miserable experience for us in New York and in many places throughout the country. I represent 3 of the hardest hit counties in the United States of America, Nassau, Suffolk, and Queens. We're the epicenter of where this happened. And, people say, oh, don't worry about, do herd immunity. What are you overreacting for? They weren't here when people were afraid about their parents and grandparents going to the hospital and they couldn't get a ventilator. When you saw the images on TV with people lined up when it was cold at the time in March. It was raining outside. It was cold. People were coughing on each other on long lines to try and get tested. There were refrigerated trucks where they stacked up bodies because the coroners and the funeral homes and the cemeteries couldn't handle it. We were such a crisis. And now our state and every state in the country that's gone through this economic crisis needs help from the federal government. And this administration and the Senate are blocking that help from happening. And that's why it's called the HEROES Act, to try and help those heroes in our front lines to try and get the help that they need, especially through our state and local governments, but also for testing and also for the hazard pay and so many other different things. Right. So when Joe Biden says that this race is about the soul of America, he's talking about what we need to do to work together to try and help people. That's what this is about. This is not about a particular agenda for a particular group of people. It's for the people. It's for all the people. And that's what Joe Biden is all about. That's what his whole career is about. And he got beaten up at times during the primary because he talked about how important it was to work across party lines to try and get things done to help people. And so his agenda for working people, for lowering healthcare costs, to protect our environment, to make sure we treat our veterans with respect, to make sure that we have a international policy, foreign policy that really holds America up as a light unto the world again, is what he's proven throughout his entire career. So I was starting to say before, I was happy in the beginning of coronavirus that people were working together. They really did. The first few CARES Acts, the first legislation was Democrats and Republicans working together. And then when the whole thing started with the president talking about we've got to reopen and encouraging people to show up at state capitals with masks and guns and say you got to reopen, everything started to go south and it became the same old partisan stuff. So I'll do everything I can to help elect Joe Biden as our president. And I think that Italian Americans have to play a very important role. We know too many of our Italian American friends have gone over to the other side over the years. Most of us grew up as strong Democrats, and a lot of Italian Americans have become Republicans. We've got to get them over to our side because they're not happy with the way this president treats people. And every Republican and every independent, those are worth 2 for 1, because instead of voting for the other person, they're voting for us, and the other guy's losing a vote. So they're all worth 2 for 1. We need the Italian Americans to really work hard to not only bring in all of our Democrats, but to help us get the moderates and the independents and the disgruntled Republicans, of which there are a lot of them, to come over onto our side as well. So I'll stay on the call and answer any questions I can ask. I don't want to go on filibuster for too long. Let me just tell you quickly about my Italian American story, and then I'll finish up. My father was born in Italy, came to the United States as a young boy, first kid in the neighborhood to go to college, went to Fordham University, and then he fought in World War II as a navigator on a B-24. And he got the Distinguished Flying Cross with 3 oak leaf clusters. And he came back from World War II, and he went to Harvard Law School on the GI Bill in the 1940s. Imagine an Italian immigrant going to Harvard Law School in the 1940s. And my father would always say, "What a country!" And he could, when he got out of law school at Harvard, couldn't get a job at a New York law firm, wouldn't hire Italians at those days. People forget how discriminated Italian Americans were at that time. You have to remember that Mussolini had teamed up with Hitler, and everybody looked down at the Italians and said, "Oh, you're a fascist, or you're in the mafia," or whatever. People who treated Italians with such disrespect at the time. And he came back, he teamed up with another guy in a local law firm, and he went on to become the youngest judge in the history of New York State at 28 years old, the city court judge of Glen Cove. And then he went on to do other things. Great American success story. And best man I ever knew. He died 2 weeks before my election in 2016. He was 95 years old. Oh. Great, great man. And so it's his values that I see in Joe Biden. It's the values that appreciates hard work, and the values that wants to make America be a beacon to the rest of the world, that always wants to try and do the right thing, even when it's the toughest thing to do. And that's why we all need to work together to make sure Joe Biden wins this election. Okay, so mille grazie. Sono molto contento di essere qui con voi per questa riunione. Molto bene.
That's a great story.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, what contributions immigrants have. I too am first generation. My father was born on a boat coming over.
Wow.
So yeah. And we, obviously his mother went through Ellis Island. He was held for a couple of weeks as they held babies and did all their little testing and everything. But unfortunately he contracted polio and grew up in an orphanage, but became an accountant and had a family. And but you have a very compelling story. That's great. And I guess the message here is, having a sensible policy on immigration helps all of us.
Oh, it's so important. This president is just so inhuman as far as his lack of empathy for these young kids, these DACA kids, and for the TPS recipients, and so many immigrants that have been here for decades, just trying to live the American dream. And so when I was first mayor of my hometown in 1994, I set up the first location for day workers anywhere on the East Coast of the United States of America. And I said, there's 2 basic things we have to remember. Number 1, America is founded on the principle that all men and women are created equal, and everybody should be treated with human respect and dignity. Not all men and women with a green card are created equal, or all men and women with a passport are created equal. Everybody should be treated with human respect and dignity. And we can't make this issue be an excuse for racism. And number two is that all men and women are equal under the eyes of the law. We have to enforce our laws. There's no question we have to enforce our laws, but we have to do so in a just and humane way that treats people with respect and dignity. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm excited to get the work done in this election, and then to help Joe Biden get this country back on the right track again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Suozzi. And yes, I always have told people that our Constitution does not discriminate between immigrants and U.S. Born citizens. So you're absolutely
No, but
right.
Trump does.
You're absolutely right. And my co-host, Delegate Murphy, Kathleen, would you like to comment on what's been said before I open it up for questions?
Well, I'd just like to comment with this. I met Joe Biden about 40 years ago. I met him shortly after his wife and daughter were killed in an accident, and saw his dedication to his two little boys who were in the hospital, and he went home every day on the train to make sure that they were okay. And I remember the day that he introduced me to Jill, you know, and asked me what I thought. And so I was really, really delighted when he met her and they fell in love, and his life was started all over again. And they have a beautiful daughter together, who's exactly the same age as my daughter. So, but I've known him a long time. I know him well. I know him to be honorable and committed to the people of this great country. And he's going to be a wonderful president. And we all have to go out and make sure that our message is heard and that we win in November.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have not met
Great job, Kathleen.
Joe Biden personally, but I have met Jill Biden. And well, of course, I'm in higher ed, and she did a great job helping us. Yeah, she helped us raise money for a program that helps our youth who are at risk in our community colleges. They're at risk of dropping out because of financial stress, or in this case, it happened to have been foster youth. I work a lot in the foster youth area. And Jill was our keynote speaker. She energized folks. We raised money for this very important program, and she has sort of taken us under her wing. So
I think
really
it's
another
important.
example of really solid values that allow people to succeed and become everything they dream of becoming. Go ahead, Delegate Murphy.
I think it's important to remember the work that both she and Michelle Obama did on behalf of our veterans as well.
Yes.
When they were in the White House. It was a
White House
remarkable
together.
effort. And I serve on the Board of Veteran Services, so I'm really, really delighted with the work that they did and very proud of all her contributions.
I see there's some questions on the chat. How are we going to do this?
My handy, very competent chief of staff is going to go ahead and scroll through the questions and ask us the questions, or she'll pose a question and I'll sort of field who will respond. So go ahead, Julia.
Okay, so our very first question tonight comes from Joe Vitalich, and he asks about immigration policies in the wake of recent news where the White House recently announced that international students are at risk of losing their student visas. And he asks, what will VP Biden's priority be in reversing some of these more onerous immigration policies?
Again, it will be,
Congressman.
Yeah, I think, again, it will be, treat people like human beings. I mean, we are ready to go to try and resolve this issue of DACA. Everybody should know DACA are the dreamers. Dreamers are people that were brought here by their parents when they were under 18 years of age, and they have now graduated from high school, and they are either one, attending college, two, working a full-time job for 3 years or more, or joined the United States military. And we will give these folks a path to citizenship. They won't have to be fear of deportation anymore, which the president is doing. And listen, these are kids that went to school with my kids. And I was talking to a young guy the other day. He went to Stony Brook University here on Long Island, and he got a degree in biomedical engineering. Then he got a master's degree in biomedical engineering. Now he's trying to get his doctorate in biomedical engineering, and he can't. And he's from El Salvador, and he can't go to the conferences that the other students go to because he's afraid to leave the country. And this was, it's really just. So DACA, number one. Number two, TPS recipients, give them a path to citizenship. People that were invited here to the United States of America, many people over 20 years ago, because of some crisis happening in their country, that we said in America, come here for a safe haven, and now give those folks a path to citizenship. And then I think that there has to be a lot of work done for their relatives of both DACA and TPS recipients and others to figure out how can they have a legal way to stay here if they've been here for a long time, otherwise law-abiding, go through a process, maybe not necessarily to have citizenship, but at least to have some sort of legal status so they don't have to be worried about getting ripped away from their families. And of course, at the same time, we have to have a secure border. We have to do the things that are necessary, not building a wall, but by using technology and radar and fixing up these immigration courts that are so underfunded, trying to have a better foreign policy regarding the triangle, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, where a lot of these folks are coming from. People are not coming from Mexico. They're coming through Mexico, but they're not Mexicans. As a matter of fact, there's more people leaving the United States, going back to Mexico, than coming to the United States from Mexico now. And then the people that were coming here illegally were mainly from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. So you're going to see a lot more things by President Biden to deal with this problem in a just way, a fair way, and to also address some of the more recent things like people being invited here based upon their skills, trying to be respectful of refugees, and utilizing America's traditional position regarding refugees and asylum as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Senator, could I make a comment on this?
Sure.
So I agree totally with Congressman Suozzi, what he said. He's totally right. That's what Biden will do. That's what Democrats in Congress will do. I just want to make a little point that most of the issues involve Latino immigrants, Hispanic immigrants from Central America, from Latin America. But that's not all the immigrants. That's not everybody. There still are Italian immigrants. There still are Irish immigrants. There still are Polish immigrants. There still are Croatian immigrants. There still are Albanian immigrants. And African immigrants. I mean, the reality is this is not about ethnicity. This is about democracy and human rights. This is about what America is. And at different periods of time, when my grandparents came, it was mostly Italians, mostly Polish, mostly Irish. Some of you, same thing later on. Now it's mostly Latino. But that's not what the issue is. The issue is America, as President Kennedy said, is a nation of immigrants. And that's the big idea here. And so it's about a lot of us. It's not just about some of us.
That's a very good point. I have to say, one of our very loyal followers, Dr. Giacometti, who actually was recognized by the Italian American Foundation for her work, has a physician, is asking about universal health care and where Vice President Biden might come down on either expanding access to health care, stabilizing the ACA, or moving towards a universal plan where folks can buy into some kind of insurance. The point here is with COVID-19, it becomes very, very obvious more people need access to affordable health care. So did you want to take that on, Congressman?
Yeah, I'm 100% with Joe Biden on this, and he thinks we need to mend, not end, the Affordable Care Act. There are problems with the Affordable Care Act. There's no question about it. It also was a big deal that he said to President Obama at one time. It would really change people's lives by protecting people with pre-existing conditions, by allowing children up to 20-something years old to be on their parents' health insurance. It put almost 20 million people onto the healthcare rolls that didn't have health insurance before. And the Republicans, of course, are trying to sabotage that and have been for the past decade. Joe Biden wants to expand on the Affordable Care Act. He wants to make it so that the different plans that exist are more affordable for people.
Right.
He wants to reduce prescription drug prices. He wants to expand Medicare to more people at a younger age. He wants to do things that we've all been talking about for a long time. There are people that, the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warrens of the world want to go straight to Medicare for all, universal health care. And universal health care is a goal, that everybody has access to health insurance. That's the goal we all have.
That's a goal, right.
And we also have the goal of making healthcare more affordable and prescription drugs more affordable. But the question is, how do you get there as a political matter, as a policy matter, to try and make insurance more affordable, prescription drugs more affordable, the cost of healthcare overall more affordable? Joe Biden has the experience to actually get the policy and the politics done of working across party lines with all the different wings of the Democratic Party and other more reasonable people in the Republican Party to actually get it over the finish line. So we need Joe to help us actually get something done here. I know it's a major priority of his. It's probably the #1 priority.
Oh, we all hope so, because it is the #1 priority for most Americans, and it would be incredibly important and meaningful if we could expand access to health care. I know we've been working on that at the state level, but we can't do it as effectively as the feds. And we need help. I want to see everybody insured. Julia, there are additional questions. Do you want to go ahead?
There is. Mr. Farbors Fatemi, he asked, can you have the panelists discuss a bit more about Dr. Jill Biden and former First Lady Michelle Obama's work with veteran families?
Okay, I think that Jim, you want to handle that one, or Kathleen or Barbara, or should I try and do that?
Go for it.
Go for it. And then we'll ask Kathleen to fill in.
The Bidens have always been so respectful of those who have devoted their lives to public service and to military service. And not only because of Bo, but because they know just so many people that gave their lives for this nation, and so many people that served the nation and have given tremendous sacrifice, either physically or mentally, or just given so much for our country. And so Jill Biden and Michelle Obama, the Obamas, also had a great sense of the gravity of this type of service, worked together to make sure that military families were supported. We still have 21 veterans that commit suicide a day in the United States of America. 21 veterans every single day. And it's a national shame. And if we really want to respect our veterans, if we really want to treat them with the honor that they deserve, it's not just our parades, it's not just our flying the flag, which is very important, not making sure our monuments to our military veterans are respected. It's also about having a discourse in this country that's worthy of their sacrifice. What did they go fight for us for? For freedom and democracy. What's freedom and democracy? Politics and government. And so we need to lift up the conversation in this country and work on policies on all different topics, but certainly the #1 priority of government is to make sure that we take care of our veterans. And so Jill Biden and Michelle Obama have always made that a priority for our nation when it comes to not only mental health, but also physical health, and making sure that veterans have an opportunity to integrate back into society after serving in war, sometimes at tremendous cost. Never forget the vet.
We totally agree with you. The GI Bill actually built the middle class. I mean, we had a big deficit after World War II, and that investment in the GI Bill ended up closing that gap, because so many folks were able to get an education, get better jobs, raise their families, and they were so willing. I know at a university, some of our most dedicated students are returning vets who want to either go into teaching or physical therapy, whatever track they choose. They are so incredibly dedicated, and I would just like to provide more support for them so they can actually get an education as completely and comprehensively as they would like. Kathleen, you've been working on this at the state level. Do you want to comment?
For years and years. So in looking at the you know, the reintegration of the families after a deployment and looking at what families go through when a member of their family is deployed and trying to, you know, help keep that family connected. I think these were important issues for the Biden presidency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But so they really gave a lot of focus to the problems that were specific to military families, to the kids, their education, and they reached out, and it was a wonderful effort, and I'm really proud of what they were able to do. I'm especially proud of it. We have 107,000 women veterans in Virginia.
Wow.
And so my focus is women veterans. And so I was really pleased to see what they were doing on behalf of women veterans as well.
It's great, great answer.
I'm a military brat, by the way, so my whole life has been military.
Well, we'll just say a military angel. Go ahead, Julia.
I'm a brat, you could say it.
Greg Forte asks what President Biden will do to meet the current efforts at police reform and Black Lives Matter.
Well, if there's one thing,
go ahead, Congressman.
if there's one thing that Joe Biden, I mean, really has demonstrated is his understanding of the inequities that exist in society based on race. I mean, that's just it's a real thing. It's one of the reasons that he won this race in the primary is because people understand the empathy and the understanding that he has on racial issues. And nobody's against the cops. We're not against the police. We're for the police. We're against police misconduct. And we need to have measurable goals to try and improve upon the relationship between the police and especially with all communities, but especially with the minority community. And so, you know, there's a thing that we started in New York City called CompStat, which was to measure, you know, how many crimes were in each neighborhood. People would say, oh, the crime rate. Well, what is it in this neighborhood? Where is this problem? What's happening? And use statistics to determine where the problem is. I did it when I was county executive in Nassau County, 1.4 million people, $2.8 billion budget, one of the biggest police forces in the country that we had. And we started a thing called NASDAQ, using statistics. And you deploy your resources where the problems are. We need to measure the statistics regarding use of force. How often is this department or this police officer using force? Who are they using it against? Is it in a particular neighborhood versus another neighborhood? So have measurable statistics and drive the behavior based upon those statistics. Of course, there's the Justice and Policing Act that we passed in the Democratic House and Congress to eliminate the chokehold and to require certain amounts of training to make sure that we know that police officers who've been fired from a job in one department is part of a national database, so they won't be hired in another department. We have a lot of very, what's that?
Or in another state. Yeah.
Right, another state. So we have a lot of very reasonable ideas that, like everything else, goes to the Senate to die. And now we need the Senate to at least negotiate with us. We've got to get something done. We can't just let this be a Democrat versus Republican thing. We've got to get something done. People need us to actually get something done. And if we can't get it done now, and I'm hoping we still can, because it's just so important to people in this country that we show that we're getting something done, I know Joe Biden will get it done. I know he'll make it a national priority to make sure that we respect police officers, that we honor them for the service that they give, but we make sure that they live up to the standards that we expect as far as treating all people the proper way and having the proper training and using the proper procedures.
I too get a sense that Joe Biden is certainly very committed to giving, how shall I say, helping us change the culture of policing, so our police officers can really develop those bonds of trust, which are so necessary in really gaining the respect of the communities and being able to reduce crime because they're trusted in their communities, and yes, being colorblind in the application of their police work. One thing that and I'll have to talk to you about this, Delegate Murphy, I'm really doing a lot of research on alternatives, which the police, so far, some of the police organizations are very interested in learning about. Houston, for example, has this model where the 911 dispatcher makes a determination about whether a mental health worker should go out on the call and be the site manager, and a police officer goes along to merely ensure safety. If in fact they believe that call is really based on the fact that somebody is having a mental health crisis or a substance abuse crisis, and the police are the first to admit they're not mental health workers. We could give them more training, but they're not ever going to be, a licensed mental health professional. And having this diversion opportunity is something that has worked in other communities. So we're going to try very hard at the state level to do as much research as we can to help jurisdictions implement this.
I think
Senator, let me just point out, Senator,
Sure.
that 75% of the people in jail, 75% of the people in jail have a drug, alcohol, or mental health problem.
Gosh.
And so this debate that we're having right now is not about hurting the police or defunding the police. It's about thinking of more creative ways to address the problems that exist in society that result in people going to jail in the first place. And it's certainly about education, but it's also about mental health, drug, and alcohol issues as well.
Yes, absolutely. You stated that very well, and I thank you for putting that broader context on it. I do think that's the crux of the debate. I'll put one plug in for those of you who are listening. Some of you will be interested. My committee in the Senate, along with the Judiciary Committee, will be holding a joint hearing this Friday, which you'll be able to plug into if you go to the Senate General Assembly page. And we will be hearing from experts on this police reform and criminal justice reform if some of you are interested in following that. And Delegate Murphy, I believe the House has set up some committees that are holding Zoom meetings around different constituency groups to talk about this as well.
Certainly, we are.
Okay.
I'm really pleased that tomorrow we're having 7 gun bills signed by the governor.
Gun safety bills,
Gun
yes.
safety bills.
Yeah, it took a long time, my goodness. And
Well, one of them is a bill I put in 5 times, so
Wow.
it finally passed. I'm really delighted. And I know that in a Biden presidency, gun safety will be a strong issue.
And actually, he's been very good on domestic violence and sexual assault.
Yeah.
He's been great on those issues.
He's been great on all issues.
The Sexual Assault Advisory Committee, and the Violence Against Women's Act. Senator Biden at the time, it was Senator Biden, was a big leader on that. So, Kathleen, we have to continue to work on our gun safety bill related to domestic violence. So let's not let that fall off the agenda. Julia?
I'm determined it won't fall off.
What next should we speak about?
Do you have another question? But before we go there, Deborah Roth comments that she grew up in Port Washington.
Hey, come home.
Found out a couple of years ago that she's part Italian, so that's super exciting. John asks about ending prison privatization. Any comments there?
Prison privatization doesn't make any sense. This should not be a money-making business.
No.
And we're not going to eliminate everything that exists now, but we can't keep on funding additional private prisons. It doesn't make any sense. So there can't be an incentive to create more people in prison. It doesn't make any sense.
We agree.
We all agree.
And there's a bill that will be introduced again in Virginia, probably in the special session on that too. So we totally agree. As much help as you can give us at the federal level, Congressman, we would be very appreciative. And we have to elect Vice President Biden so we can we can make the progress that we all want to make as Virginians and Americans. It would make such a big difference in our lives. Who else wants to speak with us? We've got about 10 minutes left, so I think we could take another question and then maybe we can have
Just flipped upside down.
closing remarks.
We should ask Jim to tell us what our Italian Americans can do to help Joe Biden.
Let me just see if is there any other question, Julia, we should tackle before I ask Jim to?
We don't have any specific questions from our audience members, no.
Okay, so we've done a great job covering the land here. Okay, so Senator Rosapepe, Jim,
Sure. Well,
what should we do?
Wait, Jim, do you say Rosapepe or Rosapepe?
Rosapepe.
Rosapepe,
Rosapepe.
molto bene.
Giacomo Rosapepe to you.
Va bene, va bene. I'm really Tom Suozzi.
Suozzi.
Suozzi. But we say Suozzi here.
I understand. I was talking to one of your colleagues, Tom, the other day, and he said everything sounds better in Italian, which is totally
That's for sure.
True.
You hear people having a heated conversation. They're all gesticulating. They're talking to someone. So what was that about?
Absolutely.
He said, "Oh, it's a nice day. The weather's very nice today."
I just want to say that we do have a link on our Facebook where folks can go to sign up. So once we get your email, we can also communicate with you as well on Biden activities and things you can do to help. But so go ahead, Jim.
Well, that's terrific. No, thank you, Barbara. Thank you for hosting this. Thanks for everybody participating. Thanks for Tom for coming down virtually from New York to join us. We can have a big impact here. In the battleground states, one of which is Virginia, a lot of swing voters are Italian American. And so Italian Americans for Biden is like a big part of this election. And so signing up, and I know Julia's put it on the screen, sign up on the Facebook page for Italian Americans for Biden. Send it to your friends. Get it to everybody. We want to have a mass movement of people who are Italian American who want Joe Biden to get elected president for a couple of reasons. One is, even if they're diehard Democrats like we are, even if we're going to vote for Biden, we have friends, we have relatives who aren't. We have friends and relatives who are swing voters. We want them to understand why Italian Americans are for Joe. Part of it is our values. Part of it is issues. But part of it, I come back to this, is Dr. Biden, Jill Biden, is Italian American. This is our first opportunity to put an Italian American in the White House. That is a big deal. We need to make sure that every Italian American, if they decide not to vote for Joe, they know they're not voting for him, even though they know that he married an Italian American. So I want to make sure we spread that word. Secondly, we're working closely with Democrats abroad in Italy. There are a lot of dual citizens in Italy who are American citizens and Italian citizens. I have a cousin from the town that my grandfather came from, where her grandfather came. She's an American citizen. She grew up in the United States. She lived in Italy for 35, 40 years. She can vote in the United States. A lot of us have relatives like that and friends like that. We need to communicate with them that if you're an American citizen, even if you live in Italy or any place else in the world, you can vote in American elections. And so that's important. And then we can all contribute money, frankly. As I like to say, Joe is ahead of Trump in the polls, but he's behind him in money. And so one of the things we're going to be doing, and we'll talk more about this, get back to folks who are involved, we're going to do some fundraising in the Italian American community for Joe. So spread the word, join the Facebook page, communicate with anybody you know who's Italian American in the United States or in Italy, and be prepared for us to come after you to contribute some money. That's how you can help. Thanks an awful lot.
Sempre avanti.
Okay.
Spread the word. Biden for president.
Biden
Spread
for president.
the word.
Okay. Are there any other comments or closing remarks? We're going to end early, which is a little unusual for us, but that's great. Panelists, if you, we may be contacting you in the future. I'm not sure. For those of you who wrote in questions, if they come in later, we'll try to respond. But you've got a strong team here, a lot of backup from our national folks. We're happy to get engaged, happy to get you engaged, and thank you for listening, and thank you to my special guests, Delegate Murphy, Congressman Suozzi, and Senator Rosapepe. It has been a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Nice to meet you, Kathleen.
Nice meeting you
Hope to
too.
see you. My mother was Irish, just so you know, Kathleen Murphy.
Oh, well, that's good.
All right,
Mine
Rosapepe.
was too.
She's my adopted sister, so she's
Yeah,
got some
that's the
Italian in it.
And
I've
Julia,
got
you do a
Italian
great
in me
job,
too,
Julia.
anyway. My children are half
I like your
Italian.
virtual background.
This is
Bye-bye.
America.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a great night.
Buonanotte.
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 Sognadoro.